let us begin this week's news. And we're going to start on the national and international side and zoom this thing in as we go. So, first, let's start with a little bit of good news. This week, the Supreme Court refused to lift a lower court order blocking President Trump from deploying the National Guard in Chicago, ruling the administration failed, at least at this stage, to show legal authority to use the military to execute domestic laws. This despite dissents from the most extreme justices warning the decision could hinder the protection of masked federal officers. That concludes the good news portion of today's show. Sticking with the courts, so earlier this year, they heard arguments in a case challenging Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. This week, we got an analysis from a couple groups, Fair Fight Action and Black Voters Matter, which warns if this case goes the way many are suspecting it could, Republicans could pick up roughly 200 state legislative seats across the South, warning these groups warn the change would enable racial gerrymanders that sharply reduce Black and Hispanic representation. Now, we've mentioned this story before vis-a-vis congressional races, but I think this is the first analysis we've seen in terms of state legislative races and the harm that could be done there. Additionally, in briefs, this from Jezebel, the Trump administration has quietly ordered Citizenship and Immigration Services to massively ramp up denaturalization, imposing quotas of 100 to 200 citizenship stripping cases per month in 2026, a more than 100 times increase over historical norms, despite experts warning it's legally unsustainable and designed less to win cases than to intimidate naturalized citizens and deter future immigrants. Also this week, President Trump ordered an immediate pause on 5 offshore wind projects, which are at various stages of completion and potentially capable of powering some 2.7 million homes, escalating his campaign against wind energy and triggering warnings of higher electricity prices, grid reliability risks, and a freeze in bipartisan permitting talks. In economic news, Jim Beam will halt bourbon production for at least a year at its Claremont, Kentucky distillery beginning in 2026 as the industry grapples with falling U.S. drinking rates, tariff-driven export declines, especially to Canada, and the long lead time required to age bourbon. Now, fortunately, the company will keep other operations running and avoid layoffs by reassigning workers. I'm doing my part. I need the rest of y'all to keep up. Finally, in briefs, lots of bad news, but hey, at least Wegovy for everybody, right? The FDA approved the first daily pill for obesity, an oral version of Wegovy from Novo Nordisk, giving the company a lead over Eli Lilly and potentially expanding access to GLP-1 drugs as the pill delivers near injectable weight loss results, could be cheaper to produce, and may reach patients who can't afford or won't use weekly injections. See, in Trump's economy, you might not be able to eat, but with Wegovy, you won't notice that you're hungry. Chuck, among those briefs, what stands out to you this week?
Hard pickings, as far as I can. I mean, I guess I'll go back to, the limitation of minority voices. I guess because that's kind of a theme of this first section, especially. I mean, yes, SCOTUS has kind of decided to take a good stand with the immigrant or the federal officers issue, but I guess I'll say this: it's like, okay, at what point are the crowds actually presenting the problem, or the protesters actually presenting the problem? I mean, I'm sorry, if I have somebody masked with that doesn't have any identifying authority to come after folks, I'm going to be asking questions and hopefully protecting those folks. I mean, that is literally what I did for 7 years in the Navy, protecting everybody's rights to free assembly and to speak their mind. I know that's a weird concept nowadays, apparently, to the other side, but just saying. But with the thing on the state law side, I mean, again, I just think that there's this overwhelming thing from the Tangerine Terrors administration of saying that they want to provoke fear, they want to instill to put down dissidents in all these areas. And it's kind of like, again, it's this march towards tyranny and authoritarianism that is just blatantly out there in the, they're not even bothering to hide it anymore. Which, okay, I mean, at least they're being straightforward about it now, but I think it presents us the challenge of, hey, we can now point to it to say, this is what we need to fight against. Everybody's entitled to representation, and everybody should have a voice in it. And the fact that they're trying to limit that is just absolutely astounding to me. And that's what we should, hopefully what we as Democrats and everybody that actually cares about the country is going to use as our focal points moving forward.
They really are trying to undo the progress of the 20th century, it seems. And speaking of stories I've heard before, Tabitha, crazy old guy rails against windmills. I feel like I've heard that story.
What's interesting is he's playing off of people in rural communities that don't have enough knowledge, are fearful in general, but are also seeing a large uptick in, just acres and acres of farmland that is being bulldozed and replaced with these just megalithic windmill systems or solar panel systems, and they don't like it. So just really from face value, right? If you try and come out into these very red communities as a Democrat and try and say, hey, let's talk about windmills, they're going to be like, right, let's talk about the last 5th generation farming families that have either gone under or whatever because of these windmill farms. So it's hard to even make the argument. And they're just like tagging their trains to that issue. And they're not giving people the opportunity to really hear the arguments. It turns into this thing of where does your loyalty lie? Does your loyalty lie to the Republican Party and to Trump, or does your loyalty lie to your family?
Yeah. Well, they can't make the argument about land being taken up. Like these are offshore wind projects, and they're over the horizon. You can't even see them from land. Like this is just like an attack on wind power for the sake of attacking wind power. Like I don't even know how anybody could object to these things other than Trump's big fossil fuel owners.
Well, you see my point though, right? Yeah. Where it's like, hey, we're essentially, if you're not like a really rich white rapist, we're all on the same team at this point. So let's try and have these conversations.
Absolutely. Jesse, how about you? Any of those briefs stick out to you? Like, what do you make of this denaturalizing people push? This doesn't happen. You can't take people's citizenship away except for very, very unique, extreme circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, the citizenship is one of the ones I was thinking of talking about. The voting rights case, the Supreme Court, like all of it, I think is kayfabe. To use a wrestling analysis that I know you'll appreciate, Scott. Like we grow up in this country learning about the checks and balances between different branches of government, and to a large extent, I think the MAGA movement and Trump's success has been calling that bluff. Just be like, I don't see any actual checks and balances, because just like any 2-year-old who just keeps saying why, like he's just saying, and then what, or what, or what, and just keeps pushing the boundaries, and there's never any actual punishment or retaliation or if you storm the Capitol on January 6th and get away with it and then pardon all those people and then keep moving forward, what incentive do you have to play by the rules? I think that the Supreme Court in a lot of ways, with the forbidding the National Guard deploying to Illinois, I think that actually helps Trump because it acts as though there still are checks and balances when there very clearly are not, right? Like when the government gets to decide who's a citizen, in terms of like taking people who are already citizens and gets to remove that, when, the president can just claim there's a national security reason why we have to pause in progress construction projects off the coast. Like we live in a dictatorship. Like that is what has happened right here. And there might be some little, niggling around the edges. And like maybe in Canada, I know I'm going ahead of the game a little bit, but all these different ways that Trump is exercising his dictatorial powers, he's getting away with it 90% of the time. And, like in Russia, Putin doesn't get literally everything he commits to. There still is occasional pushback. That doesn't mean he's not a dictator. That's just the system we live under now. And I think it behooves us to start calling it out and refuse to get caught up in these little, like, oh, gosh, I hope the Supreme Court rules this certain different way. It's like, they could just not. And then what are you going to do about it? Like, at the end of the day, it's the consent of the governed. He doesn't have that consent. Like, every opinion poll is clear about that. And yet he pushes forward anyway. So, it's down to the what are we going to do about it question that's on the top of my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.